I want to turn to Daniel, the 11th chapter. We're going to begin with verse 36. One of the things that we uh, know and understand as we get into this passage of Scripture is that there is a difference in where we left off last week and a difference in where we are starting today. So in verse 35, we left off there, but it's talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, and then we're leaving that in verse 36, and we're coming up to the Antichrist. Antiochus Epiphanes was a type of an Antichrist, like like the Antichrist in so many ways. But we're looking at the actual Antichrist now as we come into verse 36, and we are recognizing that this gap of probably about 2,400 years or so to where we are today, somewhere like that, that there is going to be an Antichrist that is going to arise in the end times here, in the last days. And he's going to seek to become the supreme ruler of the world, much like Antiochus Epiphanes was trying to pull off. But he's going to come in the beginning as a man of peace. In fact, in Revelation 13, when it just says, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 7 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. And what we realize is he's going to arise out of the sea of humanity, and he's going to be extremely brilliant. He's going to be many, many times what we are, probably without much question. But it's almost like a supernatural genius as he comes on the scene. And he will be able to think, he's going to be able to act, he's going to be able to plan, he's going to be able to foresee, have tremendous foresight, but almost like a supernatural person in so many ways, and to make choices and situations, make answers happen quickly, being more effective than any other man before him. And this is an amazing thing. And when we realize that at the time of this is going to be happening here, we're going to see more and more world violence. We're going to see terrorist activities. We're going to see natural catastrophes. We're going to see wars. We're going to hear rumors of wars, earthquakes, disease, devastation. All kinds of things are going to be happening, and we're beginning to see all of this. Says, like it says in Matthew, it says, these are the beginning of sorrows, but the end is not yet. Well, anyway, we're not there yet, but we're getting closer all the time. Every day is getting us a step closer to the end, and we're all looking forward to that in so many ways. But because of the increase of all of these things that are taking place, the world is going to be looking for something to happen, someone to come on the scene, someone that's going to be able to bring order out of the chaos, order and correct thoughts out of the confusion of the mind and things that we don't understand that are going to be taking place. And so they're going to be looking for this brilliant leader, someone that's going to be able to lead, someone that's going to be able to bring peace back into the situation, bring focus back into the circumstances of life, and bring order back into chaos. And so we're going to be looking at a person. They're looking for a leader. They're going to be looking for a leader. And that leader is going to be a leader that's going to be actually a leader of 10, coalition of 10 nations. And he's going to be giving the people hope. He's going to be, over time, he's going to come on as in a position of peace. But over time, he's going to be showing his true colors. And he's going to be characterized by selfishness, evil, blasphemous things, all kinds of awful things are going to be taking place out of his life as he kills so many millions of people. Anyway, so we see this. And so we see that there's basically 9 characteristics that are typical of who he is going to be. And we want to just look at those real quick here, and starting with verse 36 of Daniel chapter 11. And it says, and the king shall do according to his own will. He will be able to do whatever he wants to do, whatever pleases him. His total focus is himself, basically, making a name for himself, pulling off a focus that is going to be, hopefully, from his perspective, leading to a one world government. He feels completely self-sufficient. And he's not going to need advice from everybody else. He's got the advice, and he believes that he is the solution to the problems of the world. And so we realize that he's going to be doing according to his own will. Second thing, he's going to be exalting and magnifying himself above every god. In other words, he's going to be more like an atheist, not needing any god. But the interesting thing is, he's going to be using the religious person that's going to come on the scene. He's going to be using that Babylonian religion focus. He's going to be using that to help turn the heart of people towards loyalty to him and to the state. And so he's going to be needing them, or that person, or that focus, in order to turn the heart of the people into a position of following him and becoming loyal to the state. Third thing, he says that he speaks blasphemies against the God of gods. In other words, he is totally against God. He's totally against Christianity. All of those things he's totally against. And he shall prosper till the wrath has been accomplished, for what has been determined shall be done. And this is kind of an interesting thing, because he's going to be used by God as God's agent of judgment upon this world, the people that are here in this world. Basically the Antichrist and all of his people that are following him. He's going to be being used to bring a judgment upon those very people that he is leading. And he's totally unaware of it. God is always in the position of being in control. We need to understand that. It's not like all of a sudden I did something, God didn't know what was going to happen, and caught him off guard. No, it doesn't happen that way. He knows every issue of our life, and he knows what's going on, and he's purposely orchestrating things even through evil people. The most evil person that's ever lived in this world is going to be that Antichrist, and he is going to orchestrate and use him to fulfill his own purposes as he winds things down. So it's amazing. And so you're going to say, why would God use this guy? Well, because he's going to bring a judgment upon unrighteousness, sin, immorality, all of the things that are going on. But he's going to bring a judgment against those things, and he's going to be using sometimes the most unlikely person to bring it to pass. The next thing that God is going to do is that he shall regard neither the God of his fathers, nor the desire of woman, nor regard any God, for he shall exalt himself above them all. In other words, whatever his background is, whatever his religious training was at the beginning of his life, who knows what it was, but he's going to reject all of that. And he's also going to reject the desire of woman, which was the desire of woman in those days. This is when this is written. The desire of woman was to maybe be the mother of the Messiah. And so he's rejecting Christ. He's rejecting the desire of woman. And he's going to exalt himself above everybody. But in their place, he shall honor a God of fortresses, a God of his fathers, whom that his fathers did not know. He shall honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. And so he's going to make a lot of sacrifice towards the gods that basically the God of the state himself, whatever image he sets up to be worshipped, he's going to make it focus towards the worship of the state and try to bring all the honor towards that direction, towards him and towards the state, to where people become loyal in that area of their life. And then verse 39 says, thus he shall act against the strongest fortresses with a foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance his glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain. So he's going to gain power. It's interesting because he's going to gain power through military conquest. He's going to gain power through intrigue, through peaceful negotiations, through treaties, through a lot of things. But a lot of it's through military power. And he's going to have basically the biggest army, huge army, massive army in the world that the world's probably ever seen. It's going to be huge. It's going to be a massive army, military force. And the people that are looking on and say, who can come against this guy? Nobody. And so that's their focus is. And so he is going to be bringing allegiance to himself, bringing allegiance to the state. And anyone that comes against him is going to be finding themselves crushed. And they're going to be coming and surrendering to him uh, because, and when they do, they're going to be receiving political favors, they're going to be receiving parcels of land, but he's going to be blessing those that are loyal to him in some way. And so the description, that is the description of the character of the Antichrist. And what we want to look at now is a description of this religious Babylon that is going to come on the scene. That's going to bring people back into a position of loyalty to the state and to the Antichrist. So if you want to turn over to Revelation chapter 17, we're going to see a description of this ungodly focused religious Babylon, the system that is going to be bringing people back into an allegiance to the Antichrist and to the state religion. And so in verse 1, it says, "Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked to me, with me, saying to me, 'Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits upon many waters.'" And so when he's sitting upon many waters is basically saying many nations, many people, multitudes, tongues, all kinds of people from all kinds of different nationalities and areas. And so I'm going to show you the judgment that's going to come upon this great harlot, this religious system of Babylon, and I'll show you what's going to happen with her. And then it says, with many kings of the earth with whom she committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So religious Babylon, we find out that is in a position to where she becomes very powerful. She is very influential. She is very wealthy. She has a lot of things going for her. And so she comes on the scene. And the Antichrist begins to use the religious Babylon as a partner with him to bring about the loyalty that he desires to come into being within his nation, the loyalty to the state. And so, because of the devastation, because of all the things that are taking place here, he does need somebody, and he turns to this religious focus in order to bring people of many religious backgrounds, of whatever they are, cults, whatever they happen to be, but he brings them all back together under this focus of this person, this woman, calls it a woman, this religious Babylon, to bring back a focus that will actually combine people and bring them back into a loyalty to the state. In verse 3, it says, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And then I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads or 7 kings," referring to 7 kings, and 10 horns or 10 kingdoms. And so we see the Antichrist being the supporter of this religious focus, of this religious Babylon, this woman sitting on the Antichrist. And so going to receive power from the Antichrist. This religious focus is going to be receiving power from the Antichrist. And in verse 4, it says, "The woman," which is referred to the great harlot, "was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornications." In other words, she is going to be very, very wealthy. She's going to be a woman of great influence, powerful influence. She's going to be someone that's got a lot of teachings and things that are not in any way according to God's ways, according to the scripture at all, but it's going to be very, very much a self-focus. And what we realize is that this Babylonian focus, this religion of Babylon, came right out of the Nimrod's empire. When Nimrod was trying to build a tower that would reach up into the heavens, he was trying to build basically a one-world system, a one-world government, where he would be in the control position of that government and turning people away from God. But he was trying to build a utopia, a state of religion that was a one-world focus. And it was the Tower of Babylon where he established this, and it was the founding of the city of Babylon and the center of false religion. And so as it fell, at the end time, when God confused the languages, it fell, and they just separated themselves off, and they went on their own directions in many different areas, wherever they could find someone that maybe spoke the same language they spoke, but he confused the languages. And so what we realize is going to happen this time, even though they were not able to pull off a one world focus, this Antichrist is going to, for a period of time, pull off a one world focus. He's going to try to tie the world totally into a focus upon the state, upon him and importance of everything, as he brings everything together to a one world focus and an attempt. So he is in the process of doing that, and then he begins to describe her, this woman, this very wealthy woman, this very influential woman, whoever she is, and on her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. And so we see this whole focal point taking place here. In Rome, the prostitutes, they had to have a name. They put a name on their foreheads to identify prostitutes. They put their name on their foreheads. And so they were in that position of being identified. To the early Christians, Babylon was basically Rome. They considered Rome as being Babylon. And so it was considered the mystery, the Babylon, the great, the mother of harlots, and of the abominations of the earth. And so many people have looked at this, and there's excellent focus on that, but many have identified the woman as religious Babylon, as a papal focus with Rome, and as papacy, I guess you pronounce it. But anyway, they've focused in on that, and one of the great books that is really kind of focusing in on that is Dave Hunt's book, The Woman Rides the Beast. I don't know if any of you have read that or not, but it is a good work laying out the possibility of this being religion, a religious focus in Rome. So we come down here then to the focus on verse 6. It says, I saw this woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. And so when we recognize what's going on down here, we realize that there are many people that have missed the rapture. They're in the tribulation. And in that tribulation, the false religious focus, the religion of Babylon, is going to put a tremendous, be used to put a tremendous focus, and will be leading in the launching of the Holocaust that will be against those that refuse to take the mark of the beast. So the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And so she was the one that was the initiator and the perpetrator of the wiping out of Christians, people that would not take the mark of the beast, Christians and Jews and whoever would be in that position. And he says, when I saw her, I marveled with amazement. And so she was drunk with the blood of the martyrs, those that gave their lives, actually missing the rapture. They recognized what they had done. They returned to the Lord during that time. And so they ended up giving their lives, and so she was responsible as the initiator of the launching of the Holocaust. And so he says, I marveled with great amazement. But in verse 7, the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. And so what we realize is the mystery behind the source of power behind the religious Babylon. And the focus that is laying out here is that there is a mystery here that is the source of power behind Babylon. But there's 7 heads. The beast carries her, has 7 heads and 10 horns. And the beast that you saw was and is not, and will assemble or ascend out of the bottomless pit, and will go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. And so what we're seeing here is that the Antichrist is going to come on the scene. And it is on the scene. And then it talks about here that it is the Antichrist himself is going to come. The beast that you saw was not. It's ascended out of the bottomless pit and will go to perdition, and those who dwell in the earth will marvel. I want to just digress for a minute here. But if you'll remember Nero, Nero was a tremendous persecutor of the church. When he first came into power, back in the time of the Apostle Paul and Peter, which he was responsible for their deaths, and for thousands and thousands of others, he was a man that actually came in as a fairly decent man. He also did some great building. He did some things out there in Rome that were very important and very much building up the people. But after his time with, when he was meeting with Paul, Paul was in front of him, and Paul, without much question, just like he did with all the, whether it was Agrippa or whether, whoever it was, he ministered the gospel to people. And what was noted about Nero is he was pretty much an even-keeled man until that time. And after that time, he would have been presented the gospel. He was released. Nero released Paul. Paul went back into the public for a short time, and then he recaptured him and took him prisoner again and beheaded him. Well, from that point on, there was a radical change that came into Nero, into his life. And he became like, he was demon possessed. He became demon possessed. He began to do things that were just totally unbelievable. And he would take the Christians and he would put tar all over their bodies, and he would just hang them up and use them as living torches while he rode around in his chariot in the nude, just screaming, absolutely insanity. And so this is what he did. And he was just an insane person, just like he lost his mind totally. And so there's demon possession that took place in that. And one of the things that I came across was interesting, and it's just an interesting thought, but this person was pointing out that the very demon that possessed Nero could be the very demon that comes back and possesses the Antichrist. Now, that was interesting, because the Antichrist is going to act a whole lot like Nero in so many ways. And yet he's going to be a person of tremendous intellect. And so that is interesting. But anyway, it talks about here the focus of the Antichrist being possessed by a demonic spirit and being basically controlled by that demonic spirit. And then it says, here is the mind, verse 9, which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And so the 7 mountains, it tells us what the location is of the woman that sits on the 7 mountains. And the 7 mountains back in that time were considered, Rome was considered the city of hills, of 7 hills. And so it's very good focus, probably, that it's talking about the woman coming out of and sitting upon the 7 hills of Rome. And that's where, again, the papacy is in that area. And so whatever that is, but the 7 hills, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on those things. And so when we see the 7 hills, we realize that there's something that is going on here. And he says that there are 7 kings in verse 10, that 5 of those have fallen. One is and the other is not, yet has come. And when his time comes, he must continue a short time. So there's 7 kings. And 5 of them have fallen, and 5 of them have actually have lived their life out. They're no longer living. And so what we're seeing, there's kingdoms that have been in opposition to the Jews, that have been 5 that are fallen. And they come from Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and the Grecian Empire. They were all empires. They're long gone now. And so there's 5 of them that are gone, that are no longer in existence. But there's a 5th one, or a 6th one, that is in existence at that time, and that was Rome. And so Rome was obviously there when this was written. It was in the position of leadership. It was in the position of control basically the world at that time. And so that would be the one that is, and then the other has not yet come, which is probably referring to the revived Roman Empire. And then when he comes, he must continue for a short time. So there's going to be a very short time when the revived Roman Empire comes back into a position of leadership. But the beast that was and is himself also the eighth. So the Antichrist, becoming out of that Roman Empire, the revived Roman Empire, is one that comes up for a short time and is going to perdition. In other words, his life is going to be short, and he's going to be ended at the end of that time, of that end of that 1 hour or 7 years. And so the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received the kingdom as yet, not have received the kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as the kings with the beast. And so when we look at what happened originally, when the Antichrist comes, he will actually conquer 3 nations, and then those 3 nations that he actually conquers are going to be intimidating the other 7, so that altogether there's 10 nations that actually will be under his control. They will be correlated together as in cooperation. They will be under his under his rulership, under his leadership, and it's going to be in a position to where they're going to actually rule with him for 1 hour, or basically for the 7 years. And so under that authority that they have, and so they're loyal to him. And these in verse 13 are of one mind. They will give their power and the authority to the beast. And so they're going to be totally loyal to him. They're going to come in loyalty to him. They're going to be with him in every way. And they're going to embrace the traits of the Roman Empire. Those things are going to become part of the ruling of the Antichrist and the 10 nations. They're going to be affected by all those things. And so it'll be a correlation of 10 nations that will actually end up ruling with the Antichrist, and will be picking up a lot of the leadership and the authority and the value of the democracy that they will be ruling from. So we see this. And so they're of one mind. They're going to give the power and the authority to the beast. And then they're going to make war with the Lamb. And the Lamb is going to overthrow them, for he is the Lord of Lords. He's the King of Kings. And those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. And so we're going to see back in Daniel 11, just a minute, we're going to see again the end result as they come to the place to where God, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, comes in and completely overthrows the Antichrist, all the leadership of the Antichrist, and all the things that happened at the Battle of Armageddon. So we see that. And then he says to me in verse 15, he says, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are the peoples, the multitudes, the nations, and the tongues. So we see all of these nations and tongues and people from all kinds of different backgrounds and everything. Are the waters on which the harlot sits. Well, then we see that there's a turn that takes place. This harlot, this Babylonian religious woman, heading up the religion of Babylon. The beast, the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot. They will turn in against the harlot, against this woman. They'll make her desolate. They'll make her naked. They'll eat her flesh, and they'll burn her with fire. In other words, what's going to be taking place, the Antichrist is going to turn against this woman once she fulfills the purposes that he brought her in for, which was to bring loyalty to the state. He's going to turn against her, and for the purpose of getting her treasures, her power, her authority, her land, all of her wealth. He wants all of that for himself and for himself in the state. And so he turns against her, and then he wipes her out, basically makes her desolate, takes everything from her and leaves her nothing but ashes. Just totally decimates her. And so what it says here that is important is that verse 17, for God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose and to be of one mind and to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. Again, who is in the position of control? We have to ask ourselves, who really is in the control position of all these things that are taking place? And we see that God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purposes. He's going to destroy that false religion system. He's going to destroy that purposely, and he's going to use the Antichrist, the worst, most ugliest, um, diabolical person that's ever lived, filled with the devil. He's going to use him to destroy this religious focus. And so we are looking at that and it's going to happen, and he's going to give the kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. So he's going to have the Antichrist be in the control position, wiping out this religious focus, and the woman. And the woman, what you saw was that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. And so the woman, obviously being totally decimated, totally being destroyed, the religious focus is completely gone. That woman was the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. In other words, from my perspective, it's the city of Rome that would reign with such power over the kings of the earth. And so it's gone. Well, what we want to look back in is then we need to look back at the military accomplishments or achievements of the Antichrist. If you want to go back to Daniel 11th chapter and verses 40 to 45. Daniel 11, it says, he, at that time of the end, the king of the south, which is talking about Egypt, will attack him. The Antichrist and the king of the north will come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships, and he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. And so we see not everyone is happy with the Antichrist. In fact, you're going to see more as that last 3.5 years, more and more people, nations, became upset with the Antichrist. So everybody was no longer being totally conformed to the Antichrist again. And so at that time, the South, Egypt, and probably a coalition of Arab states will come against him, and they will attack him, and like a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships. In fact, they have a huge, massive army. And he shall enter the countries, and with many ships he'll enter the countries and overwhelm them and pass through. So the Antichrist turns around with his massive army, and they come against these that are coming against him, and he wipes them out, and he overwhelms them, and he passes through. And then, a little later, he also will enter and turn his focus upon the glorious land, or Palestine, or Israel, and many countries are going to be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand, and Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. And so he comes against Israel. He comes against the region of Palestine, and he probably and very likely this is where he breaks his treaty with Israel. The reason he comes and fights for Israel when these nations of Egypt and Syria come against him is because he has a treaty, a covenant relationship with them, a treaty that he signed with them in the very beginning of the 7 years of tribulation. Halfway through that, somewhere in this focus, this is very likely where he breaks the treaty, and then after he fights for Israel, he comes against Israel, and again, that's when he sets up the abomination of desolation, and during that time, whatever time this happens to be, but that's when they're told to flee. And so he comes against Israel itself, the Jews themselves, and they are to be fleeing. And it's interesting that he lays out here this focus of the countries that are escaping: Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. And again, this is back where the people that are told to flee, when the abomination of desolation is set up, the worship that he demands, they're to flee down to the area of Edom and into this area. So anyway, verse 42, he shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And so he comes then against Egypt. Egypt will not escape. And then he also has the power over the treasures of gold and silver and all the precious things of Egypt, and also the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall follow at his heels. And so as he takes the treasures of Egypt, Egypt is has tremendous wealth. And he goes and he takes the land of Egypt for the purpose of wealth again. And then he takes over also Libya and Ethiopia. And so they're the ones also that he takes over. But the news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Now, we don't know how long this is after this time when he first enters in and defends himself against Egypt and Syria. But sometime later, news comes to him, probably this is be toward the end of the tribulation, really. But the news from the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go out with a great fury to destroy and annihilate many. And so what we're seeing is that he comes out now against them as they come against him again, and to destroy him because of the unrest, because the people have not no longer are buying his authority, his leadership as a one nation or a one as a one leader, one nation in the world focus. They're not buying that anymore, and so they come against him, and he goes out after them with great fury to destroy and annihilate them. And then what happens is he falls. He fails. He's not able to accomplish the focus of what he was trying to do, but they all meet together in the Valley of Megiddo, these two massive armies. And they meet together and they fight, and then he's not destroyed, he's wiped out, but he's not destroyed by either one of the army at all, but he's destroyed by God himself. And it says here that the Lord will come, and the two things that wipe him out are the glory of the Lord, the splendor of the Lord, and his word, his spoken word. And back in 2 Thessalonians 2:8, it just says, by the breath of his mouth and the brightness of his countenance, he is literally destroyed. And so the Antichrist then will be cast into the lake of fire with the devil, with all the demonic court of angels that will be with him. They will be cast into the lake of fire. And then it says, he shall plant the tents of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. He shall come to his end. In other words, he's going to be wiped out completely, and no one will help him. So we see again the hand of the Lord on this whole situation. So as we come and we look at this kind of a focal point ourselves, we need to ask ourselves as Christians, where are we headed? Where are we going? Well, I want to encourage us. We are headed that direction. We're headed to the end. And so we realize that there is many antichrists all over the world today. People that are against Christ. The Antichrist, whether he's on the scene in real life today or not, we don't know. Very likely he is. But what we realize is there's many antichrists that are against us. And I'm reminded of what it says in 1 John 2:18. It says, little children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many antichrists have come, by which now it is the last hour, by which we know it's the last hour. So even as we're looking today, this is the time when we need to realize we have a focus, we have a purpose, we have a ministry, we have a desire that's laid out for us to fulfill as we are here today. Now, we don't know exactly when everything's coming to pass. Now, we can watch the signs. We need to keep our eyes open to the signs of the times as when these things are going to be coming to pass. But we need to realize that we have a duty to fulfill here. We have a commission that's been given to us to go make disciples, to see people brought into the kingdom of God, and to see God using us to expand his church. He says, I'm going to build my church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. And when we're walking where we belong with the Lord, it's just like God was in control of all of the issues that happened and using evil forces in order to bring about his purposes. We realize that the same thing is happening today. And God is going to use us, you and I, Christian people that have committed our lives to the Lord. The church, basically the church, is going to be used by God to fulfill the purposes that are going to be leading right up to the end times. So there's going to be many antichrists. Many people are against Christ. Many cults are against Christ. Many religions against Christ. Many in the government against Christ. Many things just against Christ. Very much so. And so what do we need to be doing? We need to be grabbing a hold of the focus of why we're here and beginning to say, God, I am willing to do whatever is necessary. I'm here. I'm your ambassador. I am the person that you've given the commission to. I need that empowering which he's given to us already. I need the boldness. We need to be praying for boldness that we would reach out and touch the lives of those that are all around us that need the Lord. And 1 Corinthians 15:58 just literally lays it out here. Therefore, it says, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, and always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing your labor is not in vain in the Lord. That's where we are. So I want to encourage us as we are thinking about where we are today and continually being aware of what is taking place today, that the things are coming just as has been prophesied here. It's going to be coming to pass. But we have our commission that we need to recognize has been given to us today and presently, and we need to be fulfilling that commission. So be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor, our labor, is not in vain. God is using us, and He's using you, and He's using all the body of Christ in order to fulfill His purposes as He is in that control position all around the world. Let's pray. Father God, again, this morning we need